As we begin, Wendy Julian, our executive director, will explain how those of you calling in today can participate during this meeting. And then Wendy, please take the roll.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Carrillo. You just got the notification that this meeting is being recorded and will be available for you to watch later because we're so excited about the topic and want to be able to include as many people as possible. We are holding today's meeting as a public meeting, but it is a special public meeting of the Probation Oversight Commission. We're doing that instead of holding it as a town hall because so many of our commissioners wanted to attend because, as you know, we have incredible commissioners and didn't want to exclude any of them. And they all wanted to hear and engage with our panelists. So what that means is that we have an agenda that you all saw posted. We'll be having minutes of this meeting, and we will be taking public comment on the one item on the agenda, which is the presentation by our fabulous panel, and taking public comment on that issue, the issue of programs and services in the facility after the panel. At the end of today's meeting, we will be taking public comment on items not on the agenda, as is required by the Brown Act. I will say in advance that we have received a number of written public comments today that are not about items on the agenda. They will be attached to this agenda, although I would like to invite those of you who have comments on other items to join us for our regular Probation Oversight Commission this Thursday at 12 o'clock, where you are welcome to comment on the agenda items that you've written in about. You also are welcome to stay and give public comment today at the end of the meeting. Either way is fine, or both if you wish. Also, you can always submit your written public comments about this topic or any other to info@poc.lacounty.gov. Please do not submit any comments in the chat. That doesn't comply with the Brown Act. No one can see them except for the hosts and panelists. So you won't be able to share them with the rest of the attendees. And also it won't be in the public record. So please send your comments to info@poc.lacounty.gov if you wish to submit it in writing. Our commission meeting is being broadcast live today on our Facebook page, I think. I'm actually, is that true, Ismail? Are we on Facebook Live today? I'm not sure we are. We usually are, and no matter what, we will put it up on Facebook afterwards, so you can get it there, or you can find it at our website and be able to watch the video. So you can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, our new YouTube account, see lots of videos and recap. También les damos la bienvenida si están aquí y prefieren hacer sus comentarios en español. Nomás avísenme, por favor, que si quiere traducción, si ha traído su propio traductor y aceptaremos su comentario en español. So I'm going to call the roll since we are doing this officially. Commissioners, please unmute yourself and let me know that you're here. Commissioner Dolores Canales.
Yes, present. Thank you.
Commissioner Danielle Dupuy, I believe, is teaching tonight and not with us. Commissioner Sean Garcia-Lays.
Hello, I'm here.
Commissioner Shay Jackson. Commissioner Samuel Lewis. I did see Sam. Oh, I hear you. Okay, great. Commissioner Lewis is here. Commissioner Don Meredith. Just checking our participant list to make sure they're not there. Commissioner Dominique Nong.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Commissioner Kain Yamashiro. And Chair Frankie Carrillo.
I'm here. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, great. So I'm going to turn this over shortly to Erica and Frankie. I just want to start by saying a very warm thank you to the folks who've joined us on our panel today. And as I mentioned, to our commissioners. I love my job as working for the Probation Oversight Commission. And a big part of the reason why is the incredible outpouring of interest and support that we have had from people in a multitude of areas around the community and the work we're doing with probation reform. And I have learned from our commissioners, as well as from the folks who are on the panel tonight, many things about how we can work together to collaborate for a better future for the young people and the adults who are served by probation. Although today, of course, we're going to be focusing on young people. I am constantly reminded that we're also working to serve the adults that are served by the probation department, and looking forward to more work in that area. So I will say that our purpose tonight is very clear, and it is to continue to develop the goals of the probation reform implementation team, the PRIT, that many of you were involved in, and to ensure that we are providing the highest quality service and opportunities for young people in our juvenile facilities and preparing them for reentry, because that's what the juvenile probation system is about. It is about rehabilitation, and it is about reentry, and it is about creating opportunities for young people to be productive, successful, included members of our community. And I say that with a little bit of wishful thinking. It's not always the way that it turns out, but it certainly is the purpose. It is the purpose in the law. It's the purpose in our commitment. It's the purpose that the leadership of the probation department and the Probation Oversight Commission share. So thank you for being here tonight to hear more about how we can make that into a reality. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to our esteemed Dr. Reynoso, who is responsible for putting together this incredible event tonight and for all the work we're doing on programs and services within the community. And she'll give you some sense about why the folks who've joined us are here and what we're expecting tonight. Go ahead, Erica.
Thank you, Wendy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share this space with you and for the opportunity to frame tonight's meeting. Tonight, we'll be hearing from 3 extraordinary panelists and 2 highly esteemed guest speakers. Our panel is comprised of people with lived experiences, otherwise known to us as subject matter experts in the juvenile justice arena. Whether we're a probation officer, mental health professional, nurse, teacher, community member, or administrator, I think we intuitively know the importance of centering and anchoring these voices and the voices of our young people currently inside to the work being done relating to programs, services, and to best practices in general. According to emergent research, particularly in the areas within system reform, policy, and service implementation, I quote from a recent report by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Listening to and engaging with people with lived experiences has helped improve the outcomes and impacts of local, state, and federal systems and program initiatives, end quote. Key findings within the OJJDP and within the DOJ highlight benefits for both individuals with lived experiences and for individual staff members within these government entities, including an increased understanding of the needs of the people they serve. In addition, best practices are leading upon incorporating people with lived experience into behavioral health program implementation and management, especially. Finally, besides the exploding bodies of research suggesting incorporating people with lived experience at all areas of system reform and meaningful decision-making, there are several training offerings that I have personally participated in and would like to mention to you. They are virtual and easily accessible to all. 2 webinars in particular that launched earlier this year include Raising the Bar on Juvenile Reentry, What Young People Say They Need, and Strengthening Supports for Families of People Who Are Incarcerated. Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind showing the slide here. These trainings were offered by the Office of Justice Assistance Programs. Please note the citations I mentioned here on this slide, and for any further information, please contact our staff at info@poc.lacounty.gov. Again, thank you for your time. I give it to you, Chair Carrillo, to introduce to us our subject matter experts.
Thank you so much, Wendy and Erica, for providing context for our meeting. I am also very excited to hear from our panelists. We will now proceed with introducing our panelists for tonight. Panelists, if you can please introduce yourselves and share the juvenile facilities you were at the time of your current organizations or affiliations. First, we will start with Jared, followed by Brianna, Ezekiel, Nola, and conclude with Berta. Jared, please proceed.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Jared Nava. The youth facilities that I was at was Los Padrinos, and then I was in Barry J in the compound, and then I currently work for the Senate Public Safety Committee, and also a member of ARC. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Britiana. I was at Central Juvenile Hall, Los Padrinos, Silmar Juvenile Hall, placements Penny Lane, Maryville, David and Margaret, and I also attended Camp Scudder and Rite of Passage in Nevada. And currently I work for the Department of Parks and Recreation for the South District. And I'm also a part of the LA County Youth Commission, one of 15 wonderful youth. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Ezekiel Nishiyama. I was incarcerated in Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, Central Juvenile Hall, Barry J. Nardoff, the compound. Also was sentenced to DJJ, our Division of Juvenile Justice State Facilities, and did a little bit of significant time in the county jail. I'm happy to be here tonight. Also a part of the LA County Youth Commission and work as an advocate within the Anti-Recidivism Coalition.
Good evening. My name is Nola Kesia Brantley. I am the CEO of Nola Brantley Speaks. I have not spent time inside a facility, but I have spent the last 2 decades working with individuals and agencies that have been impacted by mass incarceration, especially youth who have experienced a lot of trauma. So I'm here to contribute and support this conversation.
Berta, if you're there.
You see me, but you don't hear me.
There you are.
Can you hear me now? Good evening, everyone, and I'm so excited to be on this panel as well. I am the camp director. My name is Bertha Mendez. I am the camp director of Camp Afflerball in the city of Laverne, California. Here we are tonight. I'm excited. I look forward to the conversation and here to talk about the programming that we offer at our facilities.
Thank you so much, everyone. We will now hear from our panelists about their experience and expertise within the Los Angeles County juvenile system. So briefly share how your lives were before being adjudicated to a juvenile facility and how being in the juvenile justice system affected your lives after release. And if we go to the same order, Jared, Brianna, and Ezekiel.
Hello. So for me, I wasn't adjudicated. I was tried as an adult. So I was, while first being put into the compound, then I was transferred to LA County Jail, and I went to prison after that. So my life prior to it in the streets was, I was a gang member, a drug addict. And then after entering the juvenile system, it began to create some basis of structure in my life, some sort of a foundation. And then after I was transferred out of juvenile hall, juvenile hall didn't really prescribe me with what I needed, with what I was gonna face after that and going into an adult facility. And so pass it on to Ezekiel.
Thank you, Jared. So a little bit about my life before being in juvenile hall. I think I was a pretty good student up until I think my grades started falling short. In middle school, 6th, 7th grade, I was put on the probation system, kicked out of school a lot. So I would always remember moving schools throughout my childhood. I never really stayed in the same school for more than 1 year. It was always going from school to school. And throughout my childhood, my mother would move a lot. My family would move a lot. So I didn't really have a choice. I always had to adapt to a new setting. But at 15 years old is when I was incarcerated for the first time, and facing a life sentence at 15 years old. Fortunately, I was sentenced as a juvenile and sent to the Department of DJJ. But I think like Jared said, juvenile hall didn't really offer much. There wasn't too many resources, except for when I actually got to the compound. And that's where I first met the Anti-Recidivism Coalition from joining the Inside Out Writers class. And I think the Inside Out Writers class that I put myself in, it was the first time in juvenile hall that I actually had the opportunity to put my feelings on a piece of paper, to begin that healing for myself, because I felt like it was all being kept in throughout my time in juvenile hall, throughout fighting my case. I remember being in the compound and only having about 2 months until I was going to be sent to DJJ. So it was there that I developed a lot of great relationships with those that I met through Inside Out Writers, mainly a lot of staff coming in from the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, Sam Lewis being one of the people I met in the compound and followed me throughout there. But when leaving the compound, I remember leaving, and because I liked the program so much and was enjoying that healing process for me, I wanted to continue it. And I remember asking one of my mentors, I said, would you follow me, or would this program be offered in YA? And he told me that they would follow me everywhere I go. And then that's when I was sent to DJJ. And he kept his promise. He kept showing up everywhere I was sent to, and that really helped along the way before coming home. Developing those relationships while I was still incarcerated really helped me reach out to ARC when I came home, and it was the first thing I did. The first thing I did when I came home was reach out to ARC, and the first thing I actually did when I walked out of the county jail was go to ARC's office, and met my probation officer, met a lot of great folks that have played a big, huge mentor role in my life. And from there, that's how I got directly involved into the advocacy world, being a voice for young people that are still in and working on these issues with all of you all. So very humbled and thankful to be here, invested into this conversation today.
Thank you, Ezekiel. Commissioner Robinson.
Hello, again, my name is Britiana. When my first time being sentenced to a detention center, I was 13 years old. So prior to that, I was just now becoming in tune with like the fast life, I should say, smoking, drinking, partying and stuff to that nature. So I got into a school fight at the age of 12, and I ended up being charged with a felony for grave bodily injury. So that placed me on probation. And after that, I just kept running away a little bit and doing stuff like that. So my grandmother actually told the court she couldn't take care of me. So that's what placed me in there at the age of 13. After that, upon my release, I got released probably 2 months after that. And unfortunately, I came out worse than I went in, I should say. I had nothing but time to sit around listening to stories of other girls and things that they were doing that I actually had no idea existed in the world and things that were happening. And then upon my release, I took it upon myself to get involved in those CSEC activities as well. So my first experience in there was kind of negatively influential on me, I should say. And yeah.
Okay, thank you, guys. Next question. And we're going to go with Jared, Britiana, and then Ezekiel, if you guys don't mind. Were there any times that stood out when you felt really heard or understood by your PO or staff member, obviously while you were in juvenile hall, or for that matter, by any staff member, like a therapist, a teacher, a nurse, etc. What do you think helped to make that happen? So Jerry, we'll start with you.
I would say when I was in the compound, there were a handful of POs who, just like people in any setting, in any job, who take their job serious, who are there because they want to do the best possible at whatever it is that they're supposed to do. And there's some who aren't, but there were a few that really took the time to kind of empathize with the fact, like I was in the compound and we were all fighting life. So there was a few who would sit there and ask you how was court, what are the next steps, things like that, that at that time when everything is uncertain, it kind of felt good to have, you know, an adult sit there and walk you through some of these things. And so I think what made that possible is just having people who were passionate about what they were doing. They weren't in there to try and police or inflict a further judgment. They were there to help us go through this process, to watch us through this process, and then off to the next, or if we were to go home. So that's what I could think of about that experience.
For me, it would be, like I said, my grandmother had placed me in there, so I couldn't go home based on just my actions. I always ran a perfect program, no matter where I was at, whether it was the halls, a placement, camp, etc. My program was always perfectly ran. However, I couldn't be sent back home because my grandmother was saying she wasn't ready for me to come back home. So at the time, my probation officer was Lillian Jimenez, and I was just talking to her like, dang, Miss Jimenez, no matter what I do, no matter how good I am, I can't go home. Like, this is crazy. So she basically told me if I graduated high school, because I was like 17 credits away from graduation through AB 216, excuse me. And she just told me if I graduated high school that she would do whatever she could do to get me sent home, whether that was with my grandmother, another family member, if it needed be, anything. So that really motivated me to not only graduate school, but just to know that I finally had some type of control about myself going home, because I was borderline hopeless. Like, no matter, could you imagine, no matter what you did, you can't go home because of a reasoning like that. So Ms. Jimenez touched my heart with that, and I was so happy. And I ended up graduating and leaving within 3 weeks after that conversation. So it was great.
I myself don't remember a time where I really reached out to probation staff or I pulled them aside to talk. I feel like most of my like healing came from CBOs that were allowed into the program, and I feel like a lot of the CBOs that came in had an influence on the probation staff, and like really thank the probation staff for allowing those CBOs to go in, because it just made the day better, knowing that someone from the outside cared about you. Because that's how I used to look at it. I used to look at it like someone's taking the time of day to come in here and be with me in the worst place possible, and that just made the difference, you know. Seeing people come in from the outside and take the time of day to spend with you. I remember actually one of Commissioner Dupree, back then in the compound when I was there, I didn't have a visit from my mom, and actually sat down with her through visiting time, and just we're talking about education and school, because she was teaching a UCLA class at the time. So I remember that in the compound, and just knowing that I was going to be in a better place, I think always helped me out. Like knowing that the knowledge of knowing that I was like a ball, like, you know, I might be down at this moment, but I'm gonna go higher, and not gonna let this keep me down. So that's what always kept me pretty sane throughout the system.
Thank you for those sincere responses. Next question is, were there any programs or services that made a big difference for you? If so, which ones did you participate in? And can you name a few that you wish would be offered inside today?
For me, when I was in the compound, the only program that was offered was Inside Outriders. That was the only thing that we had outside of just going to school every day. So we had Saturday to look forward to. And that definitely was the only space that I had to really be outside of jail for any period of time. And so that program did play a huge difference in my life. However, I think for me, I got my GED the second month I was in the compound. So I think it would have been very beneficial for me at that time to been able to go on to start to pursue some type of college education at that time, or to be involved in maybe some type of vocational training at that time would have been beneficial, because ultimately I was still made to go to school when I had my GED and sit in a class when it was kind of pointless. And that was the only other thing offered. So for me, I think that there's college, maybe even vocation would have definitely made a huge difference in me making a better use of my time in order to better prepare me for, the future.
For me, I would say I participate in a lot of great programs. Saving Innocence did a lot for me. I participated in multiple different things within the empowerment conferences, panels, all type of different things. Slay, Survivor, Leader, Youth. Treasures was a really good one for me too. They have this empowerment group for women. It's held on Thursdays. It was very touching, and it's just such a safe space to sit there and be around so many people who went through similar things as me, and that we can all confide in each other and speak with each other. Another one is Two Wings. Now, Two Wings Qualified Academy, I graduated that back in 2019 or 20, I should say. That class is amazing. For one, it was a paid class. So I would go to the class, but they would pay me. But I was learning so much knowledge that was more valuable than the money that they were giving me. And then it opened a thing in my brain, because they don't teach you about credit or certain things in school. So I felt like I went back to school and I learned a lot of things to help me with my adult life, budgeting, boundaries. They had so many different classes. Every week there was a new class. So I feel like if they had that offered inside the juvenile facilities, the kids will be leaving with more knowledge than they came in with, for sure.
For myself, very much like Jared, Inside Outriders was the only program being offered in the compound at the time. And it was that Saturday that we would always look forward to, and really just looking forward to that one Saturday, because it was the only program we would get, other than I think some of the church services that would come in and provide some services. But just opening more up to the DJJ, because I was sent to DJJ, there was a lot more going on and being offered over there, such as Project Rebound was helping me a lot in my education and helping me get interested into college and set out those goals. Also, the Anti-Racism Coalition really helped a lot in providing just many mentors, I think, throughout the process. Like I said, they followed me throughout my incarceration. Some of the highlights would then bringing in other young people that had just came home from DJJ. And the best thing, I think, was seeing all these other young people that had just came home from the Department of Juvenile Justice. They're all in different careers, careers like firefighting, careers like the film production, doing policy, all types of different careers. And that really helped inspire me, because at the time I was still incarcerated, and seeing all these young people like myself doing the work outside, living a good life, really helped me keep my mind sane, to the point where it's like, okay, things are going to be good. There's going to be opportunities when I come home. There's going to be careers I could involve myself in that I could really take advantage of. And that just inspired me, seeing all those other young people come in and share their stories with us. And it just started giving us young people a different outlook. What am I going to do when I come home? Am I gonna go hop into the film production? Gonna go to college? Really had to start thinking. And then on my last year, I was able to make it up to the fire camp program, which is in Pine Grove. And that really like changed, I feel like, the way I came home, because compared to coming home from a facility like DJJ, I came home from a fire camp facility. And some of the things you notice when you first get to a fire camp is there's no gates around the facility. It's a lot much more freedom given to the youth. And it's a small fire camp where there's about 80 youth max, low staff. So it's a lot less personalities you have to deal with. But some of the greatest things I think was just building up that work ethic before I came home, being able to work from 8 to 5, come back, shower, go to school from 5:30 to 9:45, and then you would shower. So like that's what most of your day looked like in fire camp, which really just kept me busy and on my feet and my mind away from, I think, being incarcerated, because most of the time was spent in the community, cleaning up, helping out in events, and that really just helped in the transition and coming home. Also, I think some of the highlights of being in a fire camp was just building up the morals and the values of being a firefighter, which helped me in my day-to-day job today, coming home, being able to work on my work ethic and install those values into my daily life really helped me make that transition, and was a huge blessing to my reentry.
Thank you, guys. I should have mentioned that question there was a 3-part question. I think everyone hit the part 1, part 2, but I want to just focus on the third part of the question, which is, can you name a few that you wish would be offered inside today? So now that you guys have been home for a while, you've seen programs that exist that you think would be beneficial in juvenile hall. We'll make the same rounds. If you have any suggestions for those who are listening, what would you like to see offered on the inside? Jared?
I think number one, like so I don't want to mess up your name. Brittana, how she said about like credit building. Like when I came home, I didn't know how to use a credit card. I didn't know how to establish credit. I didn't know that you needed credit for pretty much everything, to get a house, to get a car. And so I think offering things that provide real life skills, right? So along with when I was there, we didn't have anger management. We didn't have if you wanted to further maybe, religious studies, like maybe there's programs that are offered in prison like Toomey, where you can get kind of like almost like a degree. It's like a degree, but within like a theology. So there's different things like that I think of off the top of my head. And I think vocations, like, maybe even vocations that can be offered that will make a big difference to people who have now a viable skill to do something when they come home, rather than just all this knowledge too. Like sometimes, you could gain all this knowledge from various things. You can know yourself. You can have degrees, but if some people, school is not for them. So providing them with an opportunity to develop a viable vocation that they can use when they come home. And another thing too is not just like vocations that lead to like low-level jobs. Like if we want people to stay home too, you have to provide people with something that's going to allow them to come home and make good money. A lot of times it's focused like, oh, well, you can work minimum wage, you can work McDonald's, you can work all these different places, but oftentimes that's why people come back to jail.
Yes, I totally agree. To emphasize on vocational skills, culinary for boys, engineering, barber, haircut, braiding classes, for like different things like that, because those are vocations that are making money in the world now, right? People always got to eat. So culinary, those are great things. I know we just did a site visit, me and Commissioner Nishiyama, we went to Dirty Kirby, and they had a car there, and they were telling us how that they work on the car, and that's how they have that their like they learn how to change a tire and all type of stuff like that. Like, I don't know how to change a tire. Like, you know, I have to call AAA. So it's like while they're there at Dirty Kirby, they're getting that knowledge, and that's something that they could use when they leave from there, right? Like you said, vocational things are just gonna make you money, because that is a big thing. You know, a youth gets out of care, they don't have that family support system, and they don't have a decent paying job. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna go back to doing something that could wind them back from the place they just left from. So that's a big thing. Really just make sure that it differentiates. You don't want to just offer things that, and I hate to make it sexist like this, but girls don't always want to do, like, they're not gonna want to do mechanical work, and boys may not want to do culinary or whatever, as long as they have options, I should say, they should be able to pick something that they want to do, something they're interested in, because that's going to motivate them to pay attention and soak up all the information while they can.
Definitely want to uplift what Jared and Brittana said. Vocational training, like, also throughout the fire camp process, I did receive a lot of certificates that certified me to go and pursue a career in firefighting. And some of those certificates were like CPR training, chainsaw training. Also was able to receive my forklift before coming home. And that just helped me, like, even more in my reentry, just with all the services. But I think definitely some type of class that would help the healing process for our young people that are inside, and some type of job offering that would build up the income for our young people that are inside, to help them in their reentry, because fire camp also did offer that, build up an income before I came home. It helped me really put myself in a position to get myself on my feet when I came home. And I think it just helps our young people support themselves more. And I think the biggest thing with the fire camp program was that I was able to pursue a firefighting career, highlighting the Anti-Racism Coalition's Ventura Training Camp program that was built up. Like, it's an amazing program. It helps you make that transition into becoming an actual firefighter employed by either Cal Fire or some of the forestry and the federal services. But it just really helps us jump into those real life careers that help change our lives. So I think we need to see more of that for our young people that are incarcerated in LA County at this time. A lot more programs that are going to help them in their reentry, help them build up some type of income before they come home, help them really jump into those real life careers, because our young people are also coming to the age where they're not young no more. They're all becoming very young adults. You know, life gets real serious when we come home. Having been gone for so many long years, some of us are kind of disconnected from that. So we don't want to get that disconnection. Really just give our young people the services and programs they need before they come home to make that successful reentry.
And also, just to add, CPR, like how Nishiyama said, CPR, OSHA is a really good one. Serve Safe, those are all classes that you can take, because I actually took those when I was at Rite of Passage in Nevada. So when I left from there, I left with all 3 of those certificates, and I was able to get my first job as a dishwasher because I have my Serve Safe certification. So that's it. It really works and it really helps out. And then also, like how I mentioned, 2 Wings Qualified Academy, that's a good one, because like I said, every week we had a different topic. They had expertise coming in from different categories, teaching us everything, like stocks, everything. It was like a 2-month program, and every week I learned something different. So that's a really good program to be offered for the youth incarcerated.
Yeah, and just to to
Go ahead.
highlight, when I did visit the young people inside of Barry J, the compound facility, one of the young person was expressing to me that he wants to be an EMT. So like programs like that help young people just kind of make sure that they get their records expunged and make that transition to jumping into careers like EMT, medics, the medical field, things like that would be very beneficial to our young people.
Thank you. Okay, this question here is also a two-parter. So here we go. Did you ever have a staff member help you identify and build on your existing talents or strengths? And the second part is, what did they do? We'll start with you, Jared.
Honestly, although there was a few probation officers who would hear you out or kind of give you some dialogue, there still was the overall like aura that you're still here for a violent crime, you're still here for something terrible, and there's a fine line. And so for me personally, I didn't have a staff who tried to highlight or bring out my talents and strengths, because there was always kind of that like I said, like that dividing line where it's not over familiar or it's not really building up. It's kind of just, I think I got built up a lot more through volunteers or through my peers at that time. Like I felt like my peers, the other juveniles who were fighting life at that time, were the people where we were able to kind of balance each other out and develop, see the talents and strengths within each other, whether that been drawing or education, whatever it was, writing poetry. That's where a lot of that, the identifying of the talents and strengths came from. Honestly, my perspective and what I experienced, I didn't have any staff bringing out my talents or strengths. That didn't exist. It's still kind of cold. It's still kind of cynical. And that's the reality of that environment, is there's, we're the cops and you're in jail. And so that was my experience with it.
For me, I would say I didn't have a staff in the halls that brought out any talent or anything in me. However, I had plenty of staff that believed in me and plenty of staff that helped me out through my time. Now, however, I was in Penny Lane, and at the time I was at their 6-bed house, and the supervisor was Miss Melinda. Now, how Miss Melinda brought out my talents, at the 6-bed, the staff would cook for us, right? And not to toot my own horn, but I'm a really good cook. So I would tell the staff and everyone in there, like, I could hook us up something good. Like, I didn't want to tell her like she couldn't cook like that, but I tried to say it in a joking manner. So she ended up giving me the opportunity to go shopping every week with the budget that they had for the house. And I got to shop for the house and cook for the house. And it's like, ever since the first time I did it, it just became me. I'm the cook now. So everybody enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And what that did for me, I was used to only cooking for maybe 2-3 people in the house. Now I'm cooking for 6 beds and like 2-3 staff. So I started learning how to make things in bigger portions and etc. That's where I got a little bit more practice to say that I got more skills today. So thanks, Miss Melinda, for that.
Very much like Jared's experience, I didn't receive too much support from probation staff, but I could highlight the hybrids model staffing that was in fire camp. It was more of a distinction between your day would be separated by being with the CAL FIRE captain who wasn't a staff, and then the other half of your day would be spent with the COs. But being surrounded by a CAL FIRE captain really played a role in helping me, because it just felt more like the day you weren't being spent with someone who was from an enforcement lens. You were with your CAL FIRE captain, and they treated us with a lot of respect, as long as we treated them with respect, working hard on the day-to-day activities. But it really helped me develop a relationship with him, because we were all like one team working hard out there. young people from all different backgrounds all across the state, working as a team, working as one together. So it was very different from like a facility like DJJ, where there's more of fights happening and things like that. There were no fights happening in fire camp because the respect level was there. Because most of our time was spent working, I feel like, and I feel like we were probably too tired to even fight after working those long shifts. But just the team building really helped me connect with my peers and develop those relationships with peers and just get through the overall system. It'd be like just waiting for the next person to go home. And I think that's what helped us get through, and just knowing that we were going to be able to come home.
Thank you for those great insights, guys. Now let me ask you each panelist individual questions related to your experiences with programs and services on the inside. And Jared, I'm gonna start with you again. Having spent so much time in the compound, what program services would you say helped you the most and what didn't? Do you have any thoughts about how to improve the quality of life for those who are there now?
So I'll start off. So when I was in the compound, I had actually, at a point in time, I had actually got housed in the box. It was supposed to be for the remainder of my stay. And Scott Budnick actually from ARC went and visited me in the hole and asked me like what I wanted to do. Like if I wanted to stay right here, if I wanted to come back to the unit and be involved in the inside writing program. And at the time, one of the things that didn't help in the compound is we spent so much time in the cell that it didn't really matter if you fought or didn't fight because you were on lockdown all the time anyways. The most you got out was maybe the school, and then sometimes we had school in the unit, so it really didn't matter. However, when I got into inside writers, I had an incentive. I had something to look forward to every week. And then I actually got selected and was able to be a part of a program where we wrote a short film. And so when I got in that program, it sparked me. It gave me, at the time, purpose. It gave me drive. It gave me something to feel good about myself, to create something, to start to evaluate the choices and how I can actually accomplish things and I can complete things, and I actually do have talents. And so with that being said, I think the compound specifically, and I think juvenile hall in totality is not built to hold people for a long time, right? It's built to hold people for maybe a month or two, and then they're supposed to be shipped to wherever they need to go. However, for us who spent a significant amount of time in the compound specifically, there was not a lot of things put in place to help you develop or to grow. You're just basically sitting there stressing over the next court date. And then after that court date comes, either you're mad or sad, or you're going through a variety of things in that moment, and you're trying to cope with it for me as a 17-year-old. And sometimes you need something to grasp, you need something to hold on to. So I think in order to improve those qualities, that's what I was talking about, offering things that like Ezekiel and Brittany talked about, where you have something to look forward to. You're not focused on your next court date, or you're not focused on jail. You're thinking about when I go home, whenever that may be, when I go home, I'll be able to participate in, I'll know how to build credit, or I'll know how to financially manage money, or you begin to develop. I think there's things that need to be implemented in order for you to develop skills, in order to look at the trauma that you face growing up. Like 1 in 4 people I know in prison, I don't know about juvenile hall, but I know 1 in 4 people in prison have been sexually abused, right? And so some of that trauma are things that you need to work through. And the earlier I think that you can work through those things will save you a lot of harm and heartache if you do have to go to prison, or even if you are released, then you're not continuing that cycle because you're stuffing all these things, but you faced them and you've looked at them and you've been able to do it in a space where you're able to deal with those things in the right way and move on and develop. And so I think we need a lot of development. We need to invest in our youth. We need to invest in their personal development. So there's programs like a program I participated in was an addiction counseling program, where we went through, I think it was like an 18-week course where, it was like intensive counseling with each other though. And we built a space and a community around each other where we shared some personal things, and we began to work through, addictions and and trauma, and as well as like these ideologies that we develop growing up in these areas, you know, toxic masculinity, a variety of topics that we're able just to work through and be able to leave a little more whole and leaving and healing from a lot of the damage that we've experienced in life. Because people who end up in jail are not there, are not just they didn't just wake up one day and decide to be a criminal. Like it's a series of events that happened in somebody's life that led them to make the decisions that they made. And so I think offering more programs that's able to help people heal through those things, and then as well as restorative justice, you know, showing people the effects of a crime, you know, how like I didn't understand that until years later, how my one crime affected more than 200 people, you know, from the EMTs who had to show up and attend to the victims. And just, there's so many people that are affected by one act. And so I think, you know, bringing that awareness and helping people have that empathy. So whether, you know, you're found guilty or not guilty, even just providing wholeness and restoration, I think for both sides as well, because I think that just giving somebody a sentence doesn't restore the victims either. And so if we provide young people with understanding into what they've really done, there's the door is open, at least on their end, to maybe get into a healing dialogue with the people that they've hurt. So a lot of these programs are things that I think of off the top of my head.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Brittana, from your experience, did you ever find that programs or services offered to you focused on meeting your needs, specifically as a young woman?
Yes. Okay. A couple of them. The main one being saving innocence, right? I consider saving innocence, all the advocates, like my fairy godmothers. I tell them that all the time, right? So with me being in care, they showed numerous amounts of support. My one-on-one advocate, Jasmine, she was always there, a phone call away. But really, I didn't notice how great of an organization it was until I aged out and I was off probation, because they didn't cut me off, right? Whenever I had a problem, they reached out. I reached out to them and they found a solution. It's been numerous different things, but to meet my needs as a woman, like they helped me get into school. They helped me when I was financially unstable and I had like a hardship in my life, right? They helped me with that. They helped me grow into they helped me transform into the woman I am today, I should say. And another one is Two Wings Academy as well, because like I said, it was a 2-month program. When I first went in there, in all honesty, I'm like, okay, it's a class and they paid me. Okay, yeah, I'm in it. But like I said, it turned out to be so much more than that. Like the classes with boundaries, like that was like probably the main one that stuck out to me, because that's a word that you hear a lot. Boundaries, that you got to have boundaries. But taking that class let me know that my boundaries weren't as strong as they need to be as a woman. So they kind of opened my eyes as to, okay, a lot of this stuff is happening to you in your life because you don't have strong boundaries. You're not drawing that line and letting people know like, hey, you can't cross this, you know? And that means a lot for a woman. You can't let people run all over you. You can't let people do things that you're not comfortable with, because all it's going to do is wear and tear on you and your emotions, right? Another one I should say is Star Court, right? It's focused mainly on women, right? Judge Pratt, she's amazing. Michelle, amazing, right? And they do so much positive work for us women. It's so empowering, those empowerment conferences, to hear the voices and all this of other women that went through similar things as you. So the fact that they created that space for us youth to be in and feel safe in, that is empowering. And they gave me a lot.
Thank you so much. Ezekiel, what were some, both good and bad, striking differences between the juvenile system and the DJJ/Youth Authority? Do you have any thoughts about how to improve the quality of both juvenile hall and DJJ now?
Yes, I think some of the differences was when you get to DJJ, it's like a whole different setting, very prison-like. But at the same time, um, there is some good that comes out of it. It's mainly from the time credits that you're able to get off your time. Um, Coming from like being able to get 15 days for every month, like halftime knocked off for your good behavior. So the incentives I felt like were there in DJJ, such as time off, such as more clothes. Because in juvenile hall, you're only kind of limited to the clothes you're able to wear. And in DJJ, the clothes were offered a lot more. Being able to buy your own food, I felt like was a big difference because most of the time in juvenile hall, I remember starving myself to sleep, going to sleep starving because I mean, we would eat at 5 o'clock and you'd be hungry again by 8 and there wouldn't be another meal after 5 o'clock. So definitely like being able to buy your own food through the money that either family or friends could send you really helped in being able to feed yourself, to not go to sleep hungry, to eat with others, to be able to help your peers out with providing some food for them. That really helped. And just being able to have something to look up to, I think was the difference between juvenile hall. Because I feel like in juvenile hall, you're limited to the services, limited to like the incentives that are provided compared to DJJ. And I think those incentives like time cuts, being able to buy more food, the better your behavior was in DJJ, also the more food you could buy and the spending limit was there. So that already put an incentive right there. Like if I'm on my best behavior, then I'm gonna be able to spend more when the time comes to buy food. So like those incentives really motivated myself just to be on my best behavior. I think like Jared highlighted it earlier, in juvenile hall, most of our time was spent in our cells. So it was very hard to be motivated to not fight because your time would be spent in a cell either way. So I think those are some of the differences, and just being able to jump into different career opportunities, vocational opportunities that were provided throughout DJJ. Like if you didn't have no school, they would send you to some type of job that they had on site, and that would help. Also, I think the different experiences, the excursions that they provided really helped. Going outside of the facility, different visits to different places really helped and created just the giving the youth a little bit of freedom while they're still incarcerated. I think helped the young people know they were getting somewhere and coming closer to coming home.
Thank you so much, Ezekiel. I'm going to now move on to Nola. Nola, let me see, are you there? There you are. It's really good to see you again and to have you here. Can you please synthesize key points that you heard and offer us a summary through a trauma lens, please?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say it was great listening to the panelists talk about their experiences and offer their insight. So thank you so much for that. There's so much to say and so little time to say it, right? So the first, thought that comes to mind as I listen to all three of the panelists and just thinking about other individuals that I know as well that have spent time inside is that, we spend a lot of focus punishing folks that have already been punished by life, right? So just starting right there, we're dealing with a lot of individuals that have experienced trauma already. They have experienced cycles of poverty already, and then based on, those life experiences, that are really so multi-layered. We're not talking about just what's happening in their lifetime. We're talking about, for the most part, even as we look at our panelists, groups of people that have been historically oppressed in our nation, who, based on historical oppression, whose families and ancestors have lived in cycles of generational trauma, right? And those cycles of generational trauma include things like domestic violence, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, right? We're talking about individuals that are impacted by things like racism, where they end up being incarcerated for things that someone that looks different than them is not incarcerated for. and the consequences that they receive are much harsher. You know, we're talking about poverty. And I love the fact that the panelists were mentioning things like financial literacy, because some of these huge issues, just locking somebody up and letting them out does not change the landscape of people's lives. And so I love how our panel was focused on, if you're gonna have us in here punishing us basically for how life turned out, at least use the time to build us up so we are not doomed to the same thing when we're released. And I really just heard that theme of building us up in all kinds of ways, through vocation, through education, through being able to break down and understand and heal from trauma. You know, really that, you know, being able to, that what we hope people go and fight for this purpose of restoration. You know, another thing I heard being talked about that, you know, really stood out was this idea of restorative justice, right? Because yes, we are in many regards talking about individuals who have already had very rough circumstances, then, you know, going and being incarcerated and being punished really for having a bad life to begin with. And so I think, you know, restorative justice allows the opportunity to hold people accountable without this focus being on just punishing them for things they had no control over to begin with, right? Because it's not reasonable to not hold folks accountable and for folks not to develop awareness around the harm that they cause. And believe it or not, I know people that cause harm, that have difficult life circumstances, they come to places where they do want to rectify, they don't know how. I've gotten the letters from people in prisons saying I've caused harm. Now there's no way for me to try to do different. There's no opportunities. So I think restorative justice, especially for our young people, is something that we really, 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 really need to look at. It's something that helps us heal as a community. And restorative justice in and of itself is a trauma-informed model. And so I think it's a really, really important one. Some other things that I really want to highlight that I heard, you know, from some of the panelists and their comments was that focus on relationships. You know, relationships are huge in terms of transformation and healing and recovery. If you notice, the panelists, oftentimes they named people, not just programs. They didn't just say this program or this place. They were focused on people. They were naming them by the first name and last name. I said, that's right. Y'all better act right. You might get named out, you know? And so it's important that we focus on relationships and how we can have services and programs that allow people to develop relationships with individuals that are having these experiences. And, you know, I also heard, you know, from the panelists, this theme around maybe not sometimes having the best relationships with people inside the facilities. So I want to say to the commissioners and, you know, just to the public, we need to understand that people that do this kind of work, they are suffering from vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, moral distress, and burnout. They are not just individuals that don't care. They are oftentimes individuals that care too much and didn't know how to take care of themselves doing this kind of work that can be very challenging. So thinking about how do we take care of that factor too, because if we want the youth to have a holistic experience, we have to make sure those that are inside with them are also being taken care of. Another thing I want to highlight, and you're going to have to give me time, okay, y'all, because I'll just keep going. So just give me time. Another thing I want to highlight is generational work. Because you work and you have someone locked up while their whole family's kind of still going to hell. You know what I'm saying? And then they're supposed to get out and they're supposed to do better and thrive. So, you know, how are we really looking at the generational aspect? Because incarceration in and of itself is generational. The biggest predictor of a young person going to be incarcerated is the fact that one of their parents was incarcerated. So there's a generational aspect to that as well. So really looking at, you know, how are we working with families? We all know that the younger the person is, you know, the easier they are to work with, and the older they get, the more difficult it is because the more embedded they are in all of the stuff they've experienced. And many of our elders, they haven't had a chance to break down their trauma. But then we're sending our young people back to be in their care, right? And so I think that's a really important thing we need to think about is how do we put a focus on the family, not just the individual. I also heard a lot about, and this is more around the relationship still, mentorship. And how do we think about, you know, more programs and services that really offer that one-on-one mentorship and allow people to follow individuals across programs and systems so that people don't feel like every relationship is so fragmented, although it will be reasonable that some will be. I want to just also continue to highlight from the panelists and even in my own experience, the importance of probation and other facilities maintaining really strong relationships with CBOs. so that we bring those organizations into the facilities on a regular and consistent basis, because they can be such an amazing resource. I want to highlight again, college or vocation or something that otherwise reinforces positive routine, an opportunity to do meaningful work, to develop and learn skills while they're inside. Doesn't matter what someone went inside for, they should have the opportunity to develop and improve themselves so that when they get out, there is a new opportunity at life. And, you know, in listening to the panelists, but also in listening to lots of incarcerated people that I'm around, that is not necessarily their experience. And so this focus, I don't care whether it's young people or adults, we have to stop focus on punishing people. They've already been punished by life, trust me. And we have to start thinking about how we restore people and how we use incarceration as an opportunity to help people develop into better human beings, recognizing that through poverty and trauma and oppression, there's a whole lot that people have not been able to get. Like some of those points around financial literacy that Commissioner Robinson was emphasizing. These are important aspects that even if someone gets a good, decent job, making good, decent money, if you come from generations of poverty and you have no financial literacy, I bear witness, you ain't gonna have that money very long. You know what I mean? So it's really important that we are building people up in these ways that, you know, really allow them, like one of the commissioners said, not just to have a job where you're just barely getting by, because that leads to other stuff, trust and believe, but to really have a job that can turn into a career where you can have a life. We all want the American dream. You know what I mean? And so that is really, really important. I think it's also important that we really think about just youth development. We're talking about young people, right? And so we need to think about, you know, the engagement of young people and some of the things that are necessary for them to develop as they go through different ages and stages of their young lives. Just because they made mistakes, just because they were born into families and communities and situations that set them up for rough circumstances, don't mean they shouldn't have the opportunity to develop and engage like a normal teenager or a normal young adult. So I think sometimes we either don't focus on trauma enough, or we get so focused on trauma, we forget about some of the regular youth development stuff that should be happening in the facilities. The goal should not be for them not to have fun. These are kids who've already had rough lives, who should still be having fun, even as they're being held accountable for mistakes they have made, right? They should be full of hope and not hopeless, right? And that's a theme I heard too, is that many of our panelists, as they talk to, many others that I've talked to, sometimes they end up in facilities where it does feel hopeless. It does feel like there is nothing to look forward to. There is nothing to try for. And as we all know, that feeling of hopelessness never leads to anything good for any of us. So I'm really making sure that folks have something to look forward to. And I want to shout out Penny Lane, because you are not the first person, Commissioner Robinson, that I have heard shout out a staff member's name and talk about the transformative relationship they've had through somebody specifically at Penny Lane. And we sure don't mind putting people on blast for doing the wrong thing. So I just want to shout out Penny Lane for just the fact that I keep hearing their name come up in terms of creating these transformative relationships with young people. So I really want to just finish up by saying one more thing about just incarceration, that many people that are incarcerated have already suffered trauma. And some of the triggers for trauma are unpredictability or sudden change, transitions, loss of control, feeling vulnerable, feeling rejected, confrontation, sensory overload, intimacy, and disrespect. Almost all of those things you're going to face on a regular and consistent basis in a facility, meaning your trauma will constantly be triggered. How are we responding to that? Thank you for letting me chime in.
Thank you so much, Nola. Here we go. Sorry about that. Now I'd like to introduce Probation Director Bertha Mendez to please share her perspectives and experiences implementing youth-led programs under her leadership. Ms. Mendez, it's good to see you again. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you again for the feedback that we received this evening from our panelists. I am very touched. And I also want to apologize to you young folks for the experience that you had while being detained at our juvenile facilities. I take it very personal. I've been doing this job for 33 years. I started my career as a detention service officer at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall. I worked 6 years at Camp Carl Holton, which is now closed. As you know, we have various of our facilities have been closed. But I do want to tell you something, that what you are commenting tonight is what we're doing here at Camp Affable. So I'm very pleased to inform you of some of the programs that we are having through our partnerships, collaboration with our community-based and faith-based organizations, but also our probation officers have stepped up. So I'll speak a little bit about the type of programs that we do have here. I do want to have the opportunity to answer any questions from anyone at any time. But let me just tell you about they call us monsters. I see Jared's, I don't see his face now, but they call us monsters. The documentary chief, our former chief, sent a mass email to the probation employees informing us of the documentary and inviting us to watch it. I was working in the field. I've worked at offices like Crenshaw, Firestone, East LA, and downtown Los Angeles. And I was working in the adult probation sector of our department for almost 22 years. I had left the juvenile sector and worked in adults. And when I watched the documentary, They Call Us Monsters, I sent an email to our then deputy director, Felicia Cotton, and said, I now know where I need to be. I'd like a transfer from the adult field services to the Residential Treatment Services Bureau. I want to work with those young people. That's where I need to be. That's where my heart is, and that's where my calling is. So this is not a job, folks. This is definitely a calling for me. This is a place where we see healing, where we see and have an opportunity to make a difference in the young men that we service. These young men under our care are exactly that. They're under our care. And so we are responsible for providing them with these services that you were lacking, Ezekiel, and also Jared, in the juvenile halls. I know our Commissioner Robinson did explain that she did experience some programming at the placement facilities where she was at. And again, I think it was mentioned, Jared mentioned that in the juvenile halls, the anxiety levels are a lot higher than in the camp facilities. And the reason for that, as you know, is because of the adjudication process not having occurred. And so they do tend to have a lot more anxiety. So when the youth arrive to us in the camps, we have them for 5 to 7, 7 to 9 months. So we're able to stabilize them a little more. We're able to tap into those pain, the trauma that Nola spoke about this evening. We're able to meet with the families and conduct family therapy sessions with our Department of Mental Health. So without giving you all the processes in the short time that I have here, I do want to speak about the financial literacy course that we offer here, and it's actually taught by one of our probation officers who is very well, very knowledgeable in finances. He has a master's in business administration. So he's able to teach that class to our young men. We also offer various work programs where, Ezekiel, you mentioned the fire camp. Our youth are paid work programs in the camp. And we've had young men leave here with $1,600. You know, one kid had 3 different programs. He was a 9-monther, so he stayed longer than the others in that particular cycle. And he left here with $2,100. So we do try to prepare our young men with certificates through our education services division that is in our institutions. And they offer a Cal OSHA health and safety certificate that Commissioner Robinson spoke of regarding culinary arts. That certificate is basically allows them to work in the automobile mechanics, culinary arts, manufacturing, construction, and it covers the health and safety through the Cal OSHA requirement. And we do make that available to our young men. We also have a partnership with the East Los Angeles College logistics, the professor there that teaches logistics to our youth. Because of COVID, we went virtual with a lot of our programming. A lot of folks, they weren't allowed into our facilities. So we had to really be creative on how we were going to provide our young folks with continued services so that there's the continuity of services during the pandemic when folks were not allowed in. That's when our probation officers actually stepped up and started creating programming for our youth in various aspects, such as, sports challenge. We have young boys. They love soccer. They love baseball. We even have a softball team. We have a swimming team. We've competed with our sister camp, Page, which is next door. Of course, we won because we practice a lot harder, and I have my kids are a little better. Anyway, so one of the things that we do have is I have a list here of about 20 different programs that we're currently running here at Camp Afterball. And I'm not going to name them all, but most of them are through the arts and culture. And then we also have the gang reduction youth development, which is through the city of Los Angeles. They come and provide healing circles. They also follow the youth in the community. So they service not only the youth, but the families. So if a youth is in the zip code boundary of the city of LA and they're in our detention centers, then they're eligible for GRID. And what GRID does is also provide groceries, support services, help a youth go get their license, help a youth get their California ID. Most of the youth within our facility who are turning 18 are also part of a board of civil duties program that we run that allows the youth to enroll in selective services and register to vote, and also how to fill out the FAFSA. How do you fill out the financial aid to get into that college level preparation? A lot of our youth, as you know, if they've been in the foster care system, placement, they're eligible for education, higher education. So we educate our youth in how to go about doing that, and also explaining it to their caretaker, parent, grandparent, whoever it is that is receiving the youth back into the community. One of the things that we're currently starting is a forward-thinking curriculum, which is it's a developmental stage system that we're currently using. I think Campus Kilpatrick started this, and so now we're carrying it over to the 3 other camps currently. Rocky, Page, and Afterball are the standalone camps that are using the forward-thinking curriculum, and it's a journal. There's 5 different journals, and they start off with what got me here, and then there's a journal about individual change plan, family. We do talk about victim awareness and the reentry planning. So the reentry planning is part of our transitional camp community transitional program that is in the field offices. And so that's a component of the aftercare part of what we do. So we do partner with our area office camp community transition probation officers so that they can continue with the reentry planning while the kid is here. They participate in the multidisciplinary team meetings, and they review the journal with the youth in preparation of their release. And that includes college, that includes employment opportunities. As a matter of fact, the East LA College Logistic Course has a partnership with UPS, and we were successful at 6 of our youth in between Page and Afterball. UPS hired 6 of our youth, and 1 mother was also hired. So we are looking into caring for the youth upon their release. It's not just having them here with us for the short time that we're able to touch their lives. I'm sorry, did someone? Okay, so the programs, we have the Urban Strategies Project with, of course, the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory, photojournalism, music. You know, the kids, you talked about the writing class that you had, both you, Ezekiel, and I think Jared mentioned a writing class. We have that as well. We do a street poets. The youth, there's, you know, of course, there's the healing component of writing music for our young people, because a lot of what they do is they talk about their experiences. And as Nola pointed out very well, you know, the struggle is real. And for a lot of these young folks, you know, the trauma that they've endured and punishing them, as you say, is not the answer. It really is not. I do want to share really, really quick. I have to tell you about the youth support group that we have here. I have a young man 4 years ago when I first got here, after I watched Jared on They Call Us Monsters and came to the camps. I had a young man that was about to turn 18, and he said to me, "I need help." And I said, "Yeah, I know. You know, what can we do?" And I thought he was talking about like talking to a clinician, you know, the trauma, you know, just being able to discuss something personal about himself. But that's not what he meant. He meant
forgive me for cutting you off, but if we can make it really short, because
I will.
we have 5 minutes.
I'm going to get to the point right now.
We're
So
trying to cut
this
you off.
young man in our youth support group, he developed the youth support group. He developed the curriculum for the youth support group, which we've been running here now for 4.5 years. And the way it is, it's run by our youth council. The youth facilitators meet with the mental health clinician, and they prepare. The youth make their own rules. The youth basically design the topics. Every group is different. It's a 10-week session, and it's a closed session. Probation officers are not allowed in the room. It's held by myself and my assistant director. They forget that we're also POs, but it's really interesting to watch these kids talk about the trauma. They talk about substance abuse. They talk about relationship building, domestic violence. They stand in front of each other.
I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to arrange a tour for us to visit your camp. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing those great insights. I got a phone ring here. 1 second.
Okay, while you answer your phone, I'm going to continue to talk.
It's over. No, you know, so I want to just leave some time for the public and also for the commissioners to chime in. I want to just say to the panelists, specifically those impacted by the system, thank you for being great advocates. Seeing your light shine the way it's shining here, and the little bit I know about your personal lives is amazing. Oh, what was that? Someone's coming with some paper, but besides that, commissioners, is anyone else like to jump in? Please raise your hand and someone will call on you. Commissioner Canales?
Hi, yes, thank you so much, Commissioner Carrillo. I just want to say to our expert panelists, the youth, I am so motivated right now. I have not been heard such an excellent panel presentation in I don't know how long. And I think you three just really came, you know, with the answers, with the solutions, even with the problems, but how they can be remedied. And I would really like to put on a call to action. So this is not just another panel. Our youth, the experts on this panel, the real experts, the people that you just had me drawn in, every one of you with your stories and everything, but the feedback was incredible. And just, you know, a call to action on how we can start getting more programming, especially the vocational skills, you know, education, we need as much of that as possible. But then what about the people that their life is taking a different trajectory and building on their skills? And so I just want to say thank you so much. I take everything that you said so serious, and I want to put out some calls to action to use your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners like to jump in? I'm looking at raised hands. Okay, don't see any. Let me just double check here. Okay, don't see any. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4 is an invitation for members of the public to address the commission on items not on the agenda. It is now 7:28, and we still have a few raised hands, I suppose, from the public. Thank you for joining us tonight for this very important town hall dialogue. It's okay if you must leave, but we will stay online to hear the rest of the public commenters. Wendy, would you please facilitate this, please?
Sure, and I want to invite people to make public comment and ask questions of the panelists as well in particular. In fact, I think that's how we will begin this. So thank you. I want to just echo that. Thank you. And what you heard from Chair Carrillo and Commissioner Canales, that this was really exceptional this evening. I was furiously writing down notes, and we'll look forward to sharing this video. Commissioner Lewis, do you want to speak before we move on to the public comment?
Absolutely. So first, want to definitely shout out all of our experts. You guys rock, Jared, all of you. Despite the system, you rise. Despite the system, you rise. But what I want to say tonight, like literally when I leave here tonight, I'm going to stop at Barry J and drop off business magazines to one of the young people in the SYTF that asked for them. I'm tired of talking. We're going to fund his post-secondary education for his bachelor's degree. I've already made the decision if I have to come out of my own pocket, because we're not doing it. This kid has been in juvenile hall for 8 years. He's done everything that's there for him. And he told me he's getting tired of waking up with nothing to do. And so, like, I don't mean to rain on this, but I'm tired of talking when we need programs for these kids. We need to feed their minds, their brains. Like, he's got time to do. He's been in there for 8 years. He's not coming home anytime soon. He's going to be one of the first kids to go to Camp Kilpatrick. He was one of the speakers at the graduation for the kids that graduated from high school. But he has nothing to do because probation does not offer him anything. And that's not, I'm not directing to line. So I'm like, literally, why doesn't he have a bachelor's program? Like, we need to give him something. And all of the other kids that will eventually matriculate through their post-secondary education that's offered for their associate's degree, we have to give them something. So I've been told not to do this, but I'm gonna do it. And in the next 3 months, we're gonna figure out how to fund, if it has to come out of my personal pocket, his bachelor's degree. Because talking is great, but I prefer action. And those who have been to the SYTF know who I'm talking about. We can't name his name because he's a juvenile, but this is an amazing kid that needs investment in his education. So I want that to be the call to action. Like, our kids should not suffer in there because of politics and BS that we're dealing with right now out here on the outside. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. You all will know his name eventually because he's coming for my job and Sam's job, right? So I'm sure he will be replacing us, as is true of many of the young people that are being served by probation right now. All right, we're going to begin with public comment. Jennifer is going to share the screen while I explain how to do this. So I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and take all public comment. If you have questions for the panelists, or you want to make public comment about the presentation, or if you'd like to make comments on items not on the agenda, we're going to do 2 minutes. This is not WebEx, it's Zoom. And so in order to raise your hand, you go to the More button at the bottom of your screen and click on the raise hand function. Some people have figured out how to do that, so it looks like you all are able to. When it's raised, you will call on you so that we can unmute you. And if you have any issues, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll figure out how to unmute you. And then we're going to start with 1 minute today, although I don't actually see very many hands, Frankie. So do you want to go back to the 2 minutes just to give folks an opportunity to have some time to speak? And we'll invite you not to use the full 2 minutes if you don't wish to. Does that sound okay, Chair Carrillo?
Sounds good. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Please introduce yourself if you wish, and share your thoughts and be respectful of the time. Honor equity and participation, practice grace and openness with each other. We're so thankful for the openness of the panelists today and ask that you show them the same respect in your comments. I actually see Commissioner Robinson's hand, Commissioner Robinson, did you want to say something before we begin here?
Yes, I do. I kind of want to direct it to Miss Mendez, Bertha. all the programs that you're saying in the camps, that's amazing. And I'm so glad to hear that. My only question to you, or I don't know if my question should be directed to you, but I'm asking to you. When the commission went to Barry J. Nordoff and we went to the compound, the main demand was how everyone's waiting to go to camp. And they told us how there was so many problems and the issues and why is such a holdup. I just wanted to know, when will those youth in the compound get the chance to receive the programs at your camps? Because they need them the most, I feel like how he just said that one boy was in there for 8 years. They're in there for years just sitting. So I feel like the faster they're able to get to the camp, the faster they'll be able to prosper more with their lives. So that was my question.
Director Mendez, you're welcome to answer, although I will tell you, Commissioner Robinson, that we have probation leadership listening I can see their names on the list today, so they are able to hear your question and probably more poised to be able to answer it. I'd also love to invite people to come to our Probation Oversight Commission meeting on Thursday at 12, because we have that item on the agenda. So we'll be talking about that specific issue around the current discussions that are happening with the labor unions and the way that we're moving folks, being able to move at least a small group of the young people from the compound into Campus Kilpatrick. Director Mendez, did you want to respond to that with anything else?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you, Ms. Robinson. I appreciate the question. And I know that some of the programs through Ed Services are in Barry J. But again, I don't have a complete answer. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with Danita Beauchamp. Danita, I think you can unmute yourself. Go right ahead and begin.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank everyone in the Probation Oversight Commission for having this town hall meeting. It was extremely an educational experience listening to the people that have been served by the different juvenile detention centers and camps. I myself was one. I was at Los Padrinos in 1984, 1985, and it was a much different system back then. And what they touched on is when these youth come out of these facilities, they go back to their old environment. And I would like to know what the department is planning on doing, like some kind of outreach, because, you know, they go back to their families, old friends, where a lot of the criminal behavior is maybe have learned or is you know, observed in their neighborhood, and that's how they got to where they were in the first place. And we have to try to find a way to change that, to make a difference in their lives, so that this is not a repetitive situation for our youth. I also commend Commissioner Lewis for offering for that education for that youth. I think if more education was offered, including myself at that time, you know, I would probably be a college, have a college degree. Unfortunately, I do not. That was not the path that I chose, but I know that there's other programs out there available to these types of youth. In fact, I believe Berkeley and Stanford offer programs for potential law students at free tuition. But, you know, those are programs that we don't know about, and these youth may not know about. So we need to have more communication available to these youth that, you know, let them know that someone cares about them, and that there is there's a path that they can choose to go differently, including education and, you know, giving back to when they become adults to help other youth get out of that repetitive situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danita. Next up, we have Jessica. Jessica, we're going to unmute you. All right, and you can begin. Jessica, it looks like you may have remuted yourself. Let's.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So first, I just want to take a moment to commend all of you that came on this panel today, because you guys seem to have so many obstacles in your life that you've overcome, and you seem intelligent, passionate people that really want to implement changes. And as you guys are now, I mean, you're people that I would love to have in my neighborhood living next door to me. I live in Santa Clarita, and we have like a culture here of family, generosity, hard work, respect, and common ground. And for us, that's a culture that's worth protecting. So I want to invite you guys just for a minute to listen, because I want you to understand that if you're going to be an activist for criminal youth, that you're going to encounter people like myself. We are not out to demonize what you're trying to achieve. Ultimately, I think we all have the same goal, because we want happy, healthy young people. We are just trying to have a voice in how that change is implemented and where it's implemented, because you guys are pushing an agenda, not just sharing an idea. So people like me and myself, we're resistant to that agenda and how it's being implemented. And it's frustrating because there seems to be a rush to push the agenda with little accountability. And the residents who are impacted that have concerns are often dehumanized, because every time we have a concern, we're met with either silence by the committee when we have a concern, or sometimes called names like NIMBY or racist, sometimes even by the ARC members. And we're even told to sit down and be quiet. One of the benefactors from the ARC, her name is Emily Scott. She's Jeff Bezos's wife. And she said, equity can only be realized when all people involved have an opportunity to shape it. So if you guys agree
Thank
with
you.
that.
That's the extent of your time. Appreciate you coming today. Our next speaker will be Elida Ledesma. Elida, you're going to have 2 minutes. And I think you're unmuted. Let's see if we can hear you, Elida.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Elida Ledesma. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts for Healing and Justice Network. And I just really want to appreciate the bravery and courageousness of the young people who joined this call today to share their very personal experiences. So I just want to say immense gratitude to the expert panel. It's not easy to sort of put your story out there, and really appreciate the vulnerability that you have shown. I think what you have spoken to is to sort of recap what was highlighted, the importance of authentic relationships to support young people, that all young people, every young person deserves access to caring adults, to resources, that, you know, we know that young people of color are disproportionately affected by the juvenile justice system. And a lot of, unfortunately, the young people that we encounter inside, this is the first time that they have access to arts programming, for example. And that is not the way that it should be. So I just want to really appreciate the voices of the young people that were on the panel today, and just sharing, and really blown away by your wisdom, and hopefully we can all follow your lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Elida. Next up, we have Dave Goldstein. Dave,
Yes,
you're
hi.
unmuted.
Hopefully you can hear me.
We can. You can begin.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to express an appreciation for the panels and the speakers that we heard tonight. Their stories are quite inspiring. And, you know, when you have success in an area like that, it's always good to hear from it, learn from it, and hopefully implement it. And that's, I think, what we all want to see. As a resident of Santa Clarita, you know, I share some of the same concerns that Jesse had. I won't reiterate those. The one thing I did want to highlight, and I don't know how aware this commission and panel is of the location of Camp Scott. Just this past month alone, there's been 2 fires within very close proximity to that facility. Thankfully, there was no wind. One of the fires very nearby was kept to under an acre, but one just up the road grew to 50 acres. If that had been a windy situation, it would have been a disaster. And we're not even in fire season yet. And I'm concerned that, you know, the county and the commission that selected Camp Scott really hasn't thought through and done the proper studies necessary to realize putting 100 youth in there, putting all the workers and support staff that go along with it, there's one way into that facility and one way out, and it's a windy canyon road. It's heavily covered with brush and mountains. Everybody on this commission needs to be seriously concerned with that. Take a drive out there and look at the conditions that that camp sits in. And, you know, seriously consider pushing back on the county for putting people in danger when there are other far more suitable camps with a track record of success of these programs in place. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And with that, I believe that's all the hands that I see up. Okay, so I would like to say my sincere thanks to the panelists and the commissioners for joining us tonight. In closing, before I hand this over to Commissioner Carrillo, Chair Carrillo, I want to say thank you to Dr. Reynoso for her work in putting this panel together today. She does this definitely as a labor of love in terms, and I mean real love, in particular for the three folks who let us off tonight. And so I know that I am able to share with you her great appreciation for being able to listen to, as she said, the experts in this work. So thank you very much for sharing. And we look forward to sharing this video of this evening tonight with a lot of people who are able to make decisions about the programming and services, because like I said, I have a page full of notes of your really exceptional answers that you brought today. And I think that you leave us with opportunities to make recommendations that are not big picture. They're very literal, very tangible things we can do, like college, right? Like vocational training, like having incentives and opportunities to be out of the cell, like having programming in the compound. Those things that you offered are brilliant. And I want you to know that we on the commission are listening. The commissioners are thankful and listening. And I appreciate everything that you're able to add tonight. So Chair Carrillo, I will turn it over to you with my thanks for such a wonderful evening.
Well, thank you, Wendy, and also Dr. Reynoso. That was amazing. Thank you for getting this all together. Britiana, I want to just encourage you to maybe someday open up a restaurant so we can all taste that food you were describing so well. With that, thank you all for your comments. As a quick reminder, our next commissioners meeting is this Thursday, June 9th at noon. Be sure to follow us on social media at LA County POC and visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email listing. It is now 7:46 p.m. and I join this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Have a good night.
Thanks, Frankie. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.